Have you ever found yourself, maybe late at night, just pondering events that seem so utterly incredible they defy all human explanation?
Hmm.
Moments where, the very fabric of reality just seems to bend, inviting us to look beyond what we can immediately see or touch.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Things that just don't fit our neat little boxes.
exactly. Well, today we're embarking on a deep dive into some of the most profound and actually extensively documented instances of such power, the miracles of Jesus Christ.
A huge topic and
Yeah.
so foundational.
It really is. And we're not just recounting what he did, like a
Yeah.
list. Our mission here is to explore why these acts were performed, what they reveal about his identity.
And crucially, what these ancient accounts still mean for us personally, practically in our lives today.
Right. We've gathered, well, quite a stack of sources, primarily centered on the biblical accounts themselves and their interpretations over time. They really shed light on the sheer scale and the profound purpose behind these, frankly, astonishing events. So our aim is to unpack these powerful stories, uncover some maybe surprising insights, and connect them to timeless truths that can genuinely impact your understanding and maybe even your daily walk.
Sounds good. Let's get into it.
Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine, just for a second, a world where miracles weren't these rare, isolated blips on the radar,
Mm.
but a continuous, almost overwhelming stream of divine intervention. Our sources open with this statement from the Gospel of John that, well, it truly challenges our perception of limits. This verse kind of blew me away.
Which one is that?
It's John 21:25. It says, "There are so many other things Jesus did that if they should be written, every one, I suppose that even the world itself could not contain the books that should be written."
Wow.
That's not just saying he did a lot. It's staggering, isn't it?
Yeah.
An unfathomable claim that forces us to rethink everything we thought we knew about the true scope of his power.
It really does. And a critical insight from our sources that this isn't likely just hyperbole, literary exaggeration for effect. When you connect this to the broader context in the Gospels, especially those mentions of great multitudes.
You're right. They followed him everywhere.
Exactly. Great multitudes coming with all sorts of diseases and infirmities. And the Bible consistently says he healed every one of them.
Every single one. Not just a few examples.
Every one. So now, try to imagine the detailed account needed for each of those countless individuals. That verse, John 21:25, strongly suggests that what we have recorded in the Gospels is really just a carefully selected sample.
Like the highlight reel.
In a way, yes. A window into a much larger, continuous, unceasing display of divine power. It implies the full extent of his reign. His works goes far, far beyond what any single book or even a whole library could possibly capture. It's almost like the Apostle John himself, who saw so much, was just overwhelmed by the sheer volume and the significance of it all.
That makes sense. So much unseen, undocumented power.
And as we dive into these accounts, it might be helpful just to clarify our terms briefly. While all the healings Jesus performed were definitely miracles, it's important to remember that not all of his miracles were healings.
Right, like turning water into wine.
Exactly. Or calming the storm. Those didn't involve physical restoration of a person, but they were equally profound demonstrations of his supernatural authority. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. So thinking bigger than just healing.
Precisely. This broader view helps us appreciate the vast spectrum of his power and authority, stretching beyond just human bodies to the very fabric of creation itself.
Okay, that distinction really helps set the stage. So beyond just the spectacle, the sheer wow factor of these acts, our sources really emphasize a profound underlying purpose. What do they tell us about why Jesus chose to manifest his power in these astonishing ways? What was the ultimate goal behind, all these demonstrations? Was it just to draw crowds or something much deeper, more foundational?
Well, that's a really important question, isn't it?
Huh?
And the Bible gives us a remarkably clear, direct answer in John chapter 20, verses 30 and 31.
So what does it say?
It says, "These are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name."
So the primary purpose, proof.
Proof, exactly. The main overarching reason for these miracles was to prove, beyond any reasonable doubt, that he is the Messiah, the long-awaited Son of God.
Not just random acts of kindness, then.
No, not random at all. They were undeniable divine signs. They perfectly fulfilled ancient messianic prophecies. The prophecies that said the Messiah would open blind eyes, make the lame walk, heal the sick,
All things Jesus did constantly.
constantly and universally. These miracles were like God's own seal of authentication on Jesus' claims about himself. They unequivocally established his divine identity and authority.
Which makes the rejection he faced and the crucifixion even more stark.
Profoundly so, especially for those who witnessed these things firsthand and still chose not to believe. And this actually leads us into a deeper, maybe more sobering concept our sources explore: the unpardonable sin.
Right, I've heard that term. What exactly is it in this context? It sounds quite severe.
It is, and it's very specific. It's not just about making a mistake or having doubts. It's specifically defined as attributing Jesus' undeniably divine miracles, things that could only come from God, to the power of Satan instead.
So, seeing a clear act of God and calling it demonic.
Precisely. Actively, willfully rejecting him as the Messiah despite overwhelming eyewitness proof. The crucial context here is that this sin would have been committed by those directly witnessing the miracles.
Seeing it with their own eyes.
Yes, seeing these spectacular demonstrations of God's power and consciously choosing to deny their divine origin and instead blasphemously claiming they were satanic.
Okay, so it's a very specific high-stakes rejection.
Very specific. And for someone who, faced with that undeniable proof, continues down that path, continues to reject Jesus as the Messiah, hardening their heart against the truth they know, and then dies in that state of unrepentant rejection. Well, our sources indicate that leads to an unpardonable state. It's about rejecting known truth when confronted with it most directly.
Wow. That really makes you think about how we, even today, interpret extraordinary events, doesn't it?
It does. The conclusions we draw when faced with things that challenge our ingrained understanding of reality. It's not about a momentary lapse, but a settled, deliberate rejection.
That's a weighty concept. It really highlights the significance Jesus placed on understanding and responding to his works. They weren't just sideshows, they were central to his identity and his call to believe.
Absolutely central.
So to really grasp the breadth of that identity, the full scope of his power, our sources offer a helpful framework. They group his miracles into 7 distinct categories.
That's a useful way to look at it.
I thought so too. It's a powerful way to systematically understand the incredible reach of his authority. Let's dive into the first one, and this is where it gets really interesting, because it starts right at the foundation: his power over creation itself. Okay, power over creation. Our sources profoundly emphasize Jesus' role not just as, a historical figure, but as the active creator and sustainer of the entire universe.
Yes, that's key.
John 1.3 declares it pretty plainly. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. Simple, but huge.
Immense implications.
And then Colossians chapter 1, verses 16 and 17 expands on this even further. For by him all things were created, and in him all things hold together. So we're talking about way more than just starting the engine way back when, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
This isn't the idea of a God who, wound up the cosmic clock and then stepped back like in deism.
Right.
A critical insight from our sources is that the Bible portrays Jesus as the active sustainer, perpetually holding the very fabric, the structure of the universe together, right now.
Holding it together. How so?
Well, the Greek word used there in Colossians, stoichein or stoicheia in the plural, often translated elements or basic principles, implies that in him all things hold together or cohere. Now, obviously, the ancient authors weren't thinking in terms of modern physics and molecular bonds, but the theological insight, as our sources interpret it, is profound. Jesus is actively maintaining the coherence, the very structure of the universe, preventing it from just dissolving into chaos.
Wow. That resonates strangely with modern science, doesn't it? The immense forces needed to hold matter together.
It really does. It's a compelling point of convergence, isn't it? This continuous divine action is what allows the cosmos to function in an orderly way. And the sources connect this even further to 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 10. It describes how at the day of the Lord, the elements, there's that word stoicheia again, will melt or dissolve. The Greek word used there is luo, which means to loose or to dissolve.
Melt, loose, dissolve.
Think about thermonuclear science today. It describes processes like liquefaction and massive explosions, where molecular structures are indeed loosened and dissolve under immense energy.
So it's like the Bible was describing millennia ago.
A concept that finds this surprising echo in our most advanced scientific understanding. It portrays a God whose power controls the fundamental building blocks of existence. And until that future day of the Lord, all things molecularly, structurally, are held together by the ongoing, miraculous power of Jesus Christ.
That adds an incredible, usually unseen dimension to his authority, doesn't it? Just holding everything together.
It really does. And the very first public miracle Jesus performed, what John calls the beginning of miracles, perfectly illustrates this power over creation in a tangible, immediate way.
Ah, the wedding at Cana, John chapter 2, verses 111.
Exactly. The setting is quite ordinary, really a marriage feast in Cana, Galilee. But then a social crisis hits,
Ran out of wine.
which in that culture was more than just awkward. It was a huge source of shame and embarrassment for the host family.
Right, a major faux pas.
Definitely. So Mary, Jesus' mother, quietly tells him the situation. And then with this incredible display of faith, just quiet trust in him, she tells the servants, whatever he says to you, do it.
Whatever he saith unto you, do it. Simple, but so much faith behind it.
Isn't it? Her confidence that he would do something extraordinary, even if she had no idea what, is remarkable. Then the miracle unfolds. Jesus tells the servants to fill 6 large stone water pots.
The ones normally used for ceremonial washing, right? Big ones.
Huge ones, yes, each holding maybe 20 to 30 gallons. So you're talking over 100 gallons of water total.
Wow.
And he turns it into what the text calls best wine.
Okay, but wait. Best wine. I think many of us, myself included, might picture something, well, celebratory, maybe fermented, given it's a wedding feast. What exactly does best wine mean here? Does that detail matter?
Oh, it matters hugely. A crucial insight from our sources focuses on the precise meaning of best wine, oinos kalos in the Greek. This term referred specifically to pure, unfermented grape juice.
Unfermented, real
Yes,
set.
specifically the very first pristine juice that would naturally flow from freshly pressed grapes. Imagine workers bringing in baskets of ripe grapes, dropping them onto a wine press. The sheer weight of the grapes on top would cause some at the bottom to burst, right?
Right.
And that initial pure juice, untainted by skins, seeds, or any fermentation process, would drain out first. That fresh, sweet, untainted juice, often consumed immediately, was universally considered the best wine.
Ah, I see. So the miracle wasn't just turning water into any wine.
No, it was instantaneously creating over 100 gallons of the absolute highest quality, perfectly pure, unfermented grape juice. A feat utterly impossible by any natural means, especially in that quantity and time frame.
That's astounding, much more specific than I realized.
It really is. It was, as our sources put it, an absolute astounding miracle of his power over all creation. It showed his ability to instantaneously create something new and perfect, completely bypassing natural processes.
A demonstration of divine perfection.
Exactly. And it completely refuted any idea of trickery. The servants knew where the water came from, the master of the feast tasted it, and confirmed its quality was superior. It manifested his glory, the text says, and as a direct result, his disciples believed in him. It confirmed his divine status right from the start of his public ministry.
A powerful beginning.
And one other point our sources consistently highlight, woven through his whole ministry, is his tendency to perform miracles on the Sabbath.
Right, that caused a lot of friction, didn't it?
It certainly did. But it wasn't casual disregard for the law. It was a profound demonstration that God's work, sustaining, healing, redeeming, never stops.
It wasn't bound by the calendar.
Precisely. By doing these things on the day of rest, Jesus actively challenged the rigid, often man-made interpretations of the Sabbath law held by the religious leaders. He was asserting that mercy, divine provision, genuine human well-being, they take precedence over legalistic adherence. The spirit of the law, which is love and compassion, always comes first. Hashtag 2.2, power over disease.
Okay, so moving from the grand scale of creation to the deeply personal realm of human suffering, Jesus also showed unparalleled power over disease.
A huge part of his ministry.
The sheer volume, the comprehensive nature of the healings he performed, it's just astounding when you read the accounts. Matthew 4, verses 23 and 24, paints this vivid picture. Jesus going throughout Galilee, teaching, preaching the good news, and healing all manner of sickness and all manner of disease among the people.
All manner. That's incredibly broad.
It is. He cured every sickness and every disease. And John 6, verse 2 adds that a great multitude followed him because they saw his miracles, which he did on them that were diseased.
The miracles drew them, understandably.
Absolutely. And our sources make it clear that countless individual healings just went unrecorded simply because there were so many. It was pervasive.
A constant stream, like you said earlier.
Yeah, and consider a really powerful example of his reach, his authority. The healing of the nobleman's son at a distance. That's in John chapter 4.
Right, the official from Capernaum.
Exactly. Here's this father in utter desperation. His son is gravely ill, back in Capernaum at the point of death. He travels to Jesus, pleading for him to come down and heal his dying child.
You can feel the urgency.
Totally. And Jesus initially responds with a challenge, doesn't he? Something like, unless you people see signs and wonders, you won't believe.
Testing the basis of his faith, perhaps.
Maybe. But the nobleman persists, just pure desperation. Sir, come down before my child dies. And Jesus' response is remarkable. So simple, so authoritative. He just says, go your way, your son lives.
No fanfare, no ceremony, just his word.
Just his word. And the nobleman believed him and left. And on his way home, he finds out his son recovered at that exact hour Jesus spoke, miles away.
Instantaneous healing, confirmed miles apart.
It confirms the absolute power and authority of Jesus' word, completely unhindered by physical presence or distance. That shows us, that God's power isn't limited by our needing to be physically present, which is a profound and comforting thought for us today when we pray for others.
It truly is. That healing at a distance really underscores the unique nature of his authority. Now let's look at another powerful story. The man at the pool of Bethesda from John chapter 5.
Ah, yes, the man who was ill for 38 years.
38 years. A lifetime of suffering. This is set in Jerusalem by the Sheep Gate at a pool called Bethesda, which means House of Mercy or Beth Cheesed. Kind of ironic, given the scene.
Why ironic?
Because it was this place where many sick, blind, lame, paralyzed people gathered. They waited by this pool, believing an angel would occasionally stir the waters, and the first one in would be healed. A place named Mercy, filled with misery and perhaps false hope.
A desperate scene.
Very. And there Jesus finds this man who's been infirm for 38 years, likely since birth, given the duration. Jesus doesn't wait for him to ask. He approaches him and asks, do you want to be made well?
A seemingly obvious question, but maybe probing deeper.
Perhaps. The man explains his practical problem. He has no one to help him into the pool when the water stirs. And then, with just absolute unyielding authority, Jesus commands him, rise, take up your bed, and walk. Immediately. Instantly, the man is completely healed. He picks up his mat and starts walking.
After 38 years of paralysis, just like that.
Just like that. And notably, like other healings, this also happened on the Sabbath. Another direct challenge to that rigid religious establishment, emphasizing again that God's mercy and healing power override narrow, legalistic interpretations of the law. The spirit of the law, love, compassion always takes precedence.
Okay, so these healings by Jesus, they were immediate, complete, undeniable. But I've heard, many stories today of people claiming instant healings, sometimes in really big sensationalized events. How do we differentiate what Jesus did from some of these modern claims, especially the ones that feel more like a performance?
That's a really important and necessary question to ask. Our sources are quite explicit in drawing a distinction between, charlatans or misinterpretations and genuine divine miracles.
Okay.
All of Jesus' healings were undeniably perfect, complete miracles. However, it's clear that not all alleged healings today fall into that same category. The key, according to the sources, lies in understanding God's sovereignty and his purpose.
Sovereignty and purpose, how so?
Well, God does not give a blanket promise, like a guarantee, to heal every single sick person in this physical life. While we are absolutely called to pray for healing, and should ultimately healing occurs according to his divine will, and its primary purpose is always to glorify God, not solely for our human comfort or convenience.
So it's not about us demanding it.
No. In fact, our sources suggest something quite profound, that God can, and often does, teach us more vital, eternal lessons through sickness and suffering than he might through continuous, unbroken health. He could use these experiences to prepare us for glory, to deepen our dependence on him in ways that constant ease might not.
That's a challenging perspective.
It is, but it's powerfully reinforced by numerous examples, both biblical and contemporary, cited in our sources. Think of someone like Evander Holyfield, the boxer.
Right, I remember stories about him.
His dramatic healing at a religious meeting was something he consistently attributed solely to God. He gave God the glory, even famously after his fight with Mike Tyson. Or consider Brett Butler, the actress.
Her healing from throat cancer?
Yes, she openly shared her miraculous recovery on national television, steadfastly crediting God alone for it. And the speaker of our source material actually shared his own profound experience.
Really?
Yes, after throat cancer surgery, doctors definitively told him he would never speak again. Yet here he was, speaking loudly, proclaiming God's power.
Wow, that's personal.
Very. And these aren't isolated incidents for him. He recounted an extraordinary experience on a trip to Israel with a woman, a gal, he called her, who was instantly healed of a severe infection right after prayer. Her ears popped, her fever vanished on the spot. And perhaps one of the most compelling stories he shared was about a lady in Yakima, Washington. She was in a wheelchair, born with a severe physical deformity. After prayer, she experienced a complete, lasting healing 2 years later. It taught the speaker, he said, a profound lesson, not about his prayer technique, but about God's sovereign will and power acting in his own timing.
So it wasn't about the person praying, but about God acting.
Exactly. Then there's the poignant account of an 18-year-old girl in Argentina battling spinal meningitis, seemingly dying in a hospital. She was instantly and completely healed after prayer. She's now 37, married, with 3 children, a vibrant, living witness to God's power.
These aren't just sensational claims, then.
No, the point is these are moments where God's power undeniably broke through, often unexpectedly, without human fanfare, specifically for his glory. They stand in stark contrast to some of the performative displays, the junkas, the source called it, parading people throwing wheelchairs. They can obscure genuine divine work by focusing on human showmanship.
Those deeply personal anecdotes are incredibly powerful. They really drive home that God's power is just as real and active today, even if it doesn't always fit our expectations or look like what we might see at some hyped-up healing meeting. It reminds us that true divine work is always about God's sovereign purpose.
Not about human performance or manipulation. And this leads us to another crucial point our sources address regarding sickness, its connection or lack thereof to specific sin.
That's a common question, isn't it? If someone is sick, did they do something wrong?
It is. And our sources carefully clarify this. While ultimately all sickness and suffering trace back to the original fall, the curse that entered the world through sin.
The general brokenness of the world.
Exactly. But it does not mean that all individual sickness is a direct consequence of some specific personal sin that person committed. Jesus himself directly corrected this common, harmful misconception. Remember the man born blind in John chapter 9?
Yes, the disciples asked who sinned, him or his parents.
Right. And Jesus' answer was unequivocal. Neither this man nor his parents sinned, but this happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him.
That's such a vital pastoral truth.
It really is. We must never blame individuals for conditions like birth defects or chronic illnesses. Jesus himself explicitly refuted that blame game mentality. God can use these very situations for his glory and purposes in profound, unexpected ways.
Okay, but does the Bible ever link specific sin to specific sickness?
Yes, it does teach that some sickness can indeed result from specific personal sin. For instance, 1 John 5.1c talks about a sin that leads to death, implying physical death in some contexts. And 1 Corinthians 11 famously describes individuals becoming weak, sick, and even dying because they partook of communion improperly, in an unworthy manner. That's presented as a direct divine judgment for a specific spiritual transgression.
Okay, so there are instances.
There are. And what's particularly interesting, maybe a bit provocative, is the discussion our sources offer around sexual sin.
Oh.
They point to 1 Corinthians 6.18. Flee from sexual immorality. All other sins a person commits are outside the body, but whoever sins sexually sins against their own body.
Sins against their own body. That's unique phrasing.
It is. The sources highlight this as perhaps a unique category of sin that directly impacts the physical body in a way that maybe anger or pride might not, at least not as immediately or directly, though obviously stress and negative emotions have health implications too.
Right.
This perspective, they note, seems bolstered by a New England Journal of Medicine study mentioned in the source material. From a purely anatomical, scientific viewpoint, the study apparently found no explanation for why married couples practicing fidelity didn't contract STDs compared to those with multiple partners. Medically, there was no anatomical reason found.
What?
But for those considering the spiritual dimension, God's word seems to provide a clear explanation based on his design and moral law. It suggests a direct physical consequence linked to violating that specific command.
That's quite a claim, connecting the physical and spiritual so directly.
It is. And it's also crucial to note, our sources strongly refute the unbiblical idea of generational curses causing sickness. They emphasize Ezekiel 18, which teaches individual responsibility for sin. God judges each person for their own actions, not their ancestors.
So no blaming Great Aunt Mildred for my allergies.
Exactly. Ultimately, God's purpose for allowing suffering in a person's life is often not punishment for a specific sin, but rather an opportunity to display his power and grace. Think of Fanny Crosby.
The hymn writer.
Yes, physically blind from infancy, yet God granted her such profound spiritual insight. She wrote thousands of hymns that still inspire millions. Her blindness wasn't a punishment. It became the backdrop against which God's grace shone incredibly brightly. Hashtag 2.3, power over food supplies.
Okay, so from healing the body, let's turn to something that sustains it, food. Jesus also demonstrated incredible, miraculous power over food supplies.
Another category of his authority.
And the story of feeding the 5,000, primarily in John 6 but also elsewhere, is so profoundly significant. It holds a unique distinction, doesn't it?
It does indeed. It's the only miracle of Jesus, apart from his own resurrection, that is recorded in all four Gospels.
All four. That widespread inclusion really underscores its immense importance to the early church and the Gospel writers.
Absolutely. It clearly made a massive impact.
And the setting itself just amplified the challenge. They were in a remote, desolate place, thousands of hungry people.
And completely inadequate resource.
Totally inadequate. Our sources really detailed the disciples' skepticism, their incredulity. Andrew points out this one boy's lunch, just 5 barley loaves.
Which was like the cheapest bread, sometimes even used for animal fodder, highlighting the boy's poverty.
Right, and 2 small fish, that's it, for thousands.
A ridiculously small starting point.
Exactly. But that meager offering in Jesus' hands became the pivot point for this astonishing act of divine provision. He didn't just make enough, he demonstrated this overflowing, superabundant power after feeding 5,000 men, and the text specifically says men, so not even counting the women and children who were also there.
Which could easily push the total towards 15,000, maybe even 20,000 people.
A huge crowd. And after they all ate and were satisfied, they collected 12 baskets full of leftover pieces.
12 baskets. More leftovers than they started with.
Way more. This wasn't just, practical resource management. It was this powerful theological statement about God's limitless abundance. His desire to meet not just our basic needs, but to provide beyond our expectations. It just silenced any doubt about his capacity or his care.
Imagine being there, having a picnic, and suddenly the food just keeps appearing. Perfect quality, perfect quantity for thousands.
An incredible display of provision. And the people's reaction was immediate, wasn't it? They recognized him as that prophet spoken of by Moses.
And they were so convinced of his messianic authority, they actually wanted to take him by force and make him their king right then and there.
Yeah, he had to slip away from them. This miracle directly foreshadowed his later teaching too, didn't it? When he declared himself the bread of life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was a physical demonstration pointing to a deeper spiritual reality, that he is the ultimate spiritual sustenance. And this miraculous feeding shows that consistent pattern of divine provision we see throughout biblical history.
Like the manna in the wilderness.
Exactly like the manna. It powerfully demonstrates that God is never limited by natural resources or human scarcity, just as he miraculously provided manna for Israel for 40 years in the desert.
That food that appeared every morning, right? The word manna itself meaning, what is it?
Right. A constant daily reminder of its supernatural origin and God's faithful, persistent care. Jesus demonstrated that same limitless divine power to provide physically, reinforcing his identity and authority as the one who controls all creation, right down to our daily bread. It shows our God is a God of abundance, not scarcity, when operating within his divine purposes. Hashtag 2.4. Power over nature.
So his authority wasn't just confined to healing bodies or multiplying loaves. He also commanded the very elements of the natural world, showing his complete dominion over creation.
Yes, another crucial demonstration.
In Luke chapter 8, verses 22 to 25, we read about him calming a really severe storm.
On the Sea of Galilee, known for its sudden violent squalls.
Exactly. The scene is set. Jesus is asleep in the boat. The disciples are with him, and this furious storm kicks up. The boat is rapidly filling with water. They're in real danger of sinking.
And these are experienced fishermen, remember? If they were panicking, it must have been bad.
That's a great point. They're terrified, waking him up, crying out, "Master, Master, we're going to drown."
Desperation.
Pure desperation. And what does Jesus do? He doesn't grab a bucket. He simply gets up and rebuked the wind and the raging waves.
He spoke to the storm.
He spoke to the storm, and they subsided, and it was completely calm. Instantly.
The shift must have been jarring. From raging chaos to perfect tranquility in a moment.
Totally. And the disciples were left utterly dumbfounded. They're asking each other, who is this? He commands even the winds and the water, and they obey him. Their awe was this profound recognition of his unique divine authority.
It's a powerful demonstration of his inherent power. And you couple that with other equally astounding events, like him walking on water.
Right, recorded in John 6, Matthew 14, Mark.
Yes, that just further showcases his complete authority over natural laws. Walking on water, defying gravity, defying the very properties of water itself, just amplified this.
So this isn't just, a cool story for Sunday school.
Not at all. It's a profound reminder for us today. The one who created the laws of nature can suspend or overrule them whenever he chooses, according to his will.
He established the order, he can override it.
With a simple word, it reveals his divine sovereignty over all physical forces. And for us, the implication is that the seemingly uncontrollable forces in our own lives, the storms we face, metaphorically speaking, are ultimately within his command. That can instill a deep sense of security if we truly trust him. Hashtag 2.5. Power over blindness.
Okay, moving on. Among his many, many healings, Jesus seemed to have a particular impact, or perhaps the accounts emphasize it, on those suffering from blindness. He demonstrated both his limitless power and his really profound, active compassion.
Those accounts are very moving.
Take the story in Matthew chapter 20, near the end, verses 29 to 34. 2 blind men are sitting by the roadside near Jericho, and they hear Jesus is passing by.
And despite their physical limitation, their spiritual insight seems sharp.
It really does. They cry out, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us." They recognized him for who he was.
Using that messianic title, Son of David.
Exactly. And the crowd, often callous, actually tries to shut them up, rebuking them, telling them to be quiet. But their desperation, their faith, it drives them to cry out even louder.
Persistent faith.
Yes. And Jesus, the text says, was moved with compassion. He stops, calls them over, asks what they want, and then, with a simple touch, he opens their eyes. They immediately receive their sight and follow him.
That phrase, moved with compassion, is so key, isn't it?
It seems to appear often with his healings.
It does. And what's truly beautiful here, consistently highlighted by our sources, is that perfect fusion of compassion and power. We often meet people who care deeply, who have great empathy, but are ultimately powerless to really help a situation.
Right. Or sometimes people with power lack genuine empathy.
Exactly. But Jesus had both. In perfect measure. It showed the very nature of God. His compassion wasn't just a fleeting feeling. It was this driving force that consistently led to decisive, powerful action and complete, immediate restoration.
Compassion that acted.
Precisely. And again, think back to the man born blind in John 9. Jesus explicitly stated his condition was so that the works of God might be displayed in him, not because of some sin.
Right, reinforcing that point again.
It reiterates that crucial theological point. Suffering isn't always, or even usually, a direct consequence of personal sin. It can often be the very stage God uses to display his glory, his purpose, his power in ways that challenge all our human assumptions about why bad things happen. It reframes suffering from just punishment to divine opportunity. Hashtag 2.6.
Power over death. Okay, now we arrive at what our sources pretty unanimously describe as the crowning issue, the ultimate demonstration of Jesus' authority, his power over death itself.
The final enemy, as Paul calls it.
Exactly. This is truly something beyond any human capability, isn't it? An act that places him in a category entirely his own.
Without question.
In John chapter 11, verses 25 and 26, Jesus himself makes this astonishing declaration. He's speaking to Martha, who's mourning her brother Lazarus.
Right, before the raising of Lazarus.
Yes, and he says to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live, even though he dies, and whoever lives and believes in me will never die." Do you believe this?
What a claim. Not just, I can bring resurrection, but I am the resurrection.
Exactly. It's not just a comforting statement about spiritual life after death. It's this radical, audacious claim of his absolute inherent power over physical death itself.
And he ties it directly to belief in him.
He does. And he extends this claim to a future universal resurrection for all humanity, doesn't he? He mentions it in John chapter 5, verses 28 and 29, how all who are in their graves will hear his voice.
And come out, some to a resurrection of life, others to a resurrection of judgment. His voice has power even over the dead.
Mind-boggling authority. And the most dramatic, vivid, publicly undeniable example of this power has to be the raising of Lazarus. That's meticulously recorded in John 11.
A pivotal moment in his ministry.
Definitely. Lazarus, the brother of Mary and Martha in Bethany, was gravely sick, but Jesus mysteriously delays his arrival.
Which caused distress for the sisters, understandably.
Immense distress. By the time Jesus gets to Bethany, Lazarus has been in the tomb for 4 days.
And that 4-day period was significant in Jewish understanding at the time, wasn't it?
Very significant. It was commonly believed the soul might linger near the body for about 3 days, but by the fourth day, decomposition was understood to have set in definitively. Any hope of resuscitation was considered completely gone.
So from their perspective, it was utterly hopeless by then.
Utterly. Martha, ever the practical one, even expresses this. She holds on to a shred of faith that Jesus could have prevented his death if he'd been there earlier.
Right, if you had been here.
But when Jesus asks for the stones sealing the tomb to be removed, her very human doubt surfaces. She says, "Lord, by this time there is a bad odor, for he has been there 4 days."
He stinketh, as the King James puts it so bluntly.
Exactly. Her words vividly capture the grim reality of death and decay. They underscore the sheer impossibility of the situation from any human viewpoint, even though she still had some underlying faith in Jesus.
Yet Jesus had already told his disciples the purpose, hadn't he?
He'd said, "This sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory so that God's Son may be glorified through it." He stated the ultimate purpose right from the start.
Okay, so standing before the tomb.
After this deeply moving prayer to his Father, Jesus cries out with a loud voice a command of just sheer raw authority, "Lazarus, come forth." And to the absolute astonishment of everyone gathered there, Lazarus walks out of the tomb, still bound in his grave clothes, but alive, well, completely restored.
From 4 days dead and decomposing to walking out alive.
Alive. Jesus then commands them, take off the grave clothes and let him go. The impact was immense, immediate, and undeniable.
I can only imagine the scene.
Many who witnessed it believed in Jesus right then and there, but it also caused this huge stir among the religious leaders, the Sanhedrin. They actually convened a meeting specifically because of this.
They couldn't ignore this one.
They couldn't. They acknowledged among themselves, what are we accomplishing? Here is this man performing many signs. And they expressed deep concern. The whole world has gone after him.
So they couldn't deny the miracle itself.
No, they couldn't deny it happened. They could only scheme about how to suppress its implications and, ultimately, how to eliminate Jesus himself. They were that threatened by this incontrovertible proof of his power and identity. It really pushed them over the edge, an astonishing account, truly highlighting his dominion over death, the ultimate enemy. And speaking of stones and tombs, there's another fascinating detail our sources connect here from Luke chapter 19.
During a triumphal entry.
Yes, exactly. As Jesus is riding into Jerusalem, people are exuberantly praising him, shouting hosannas, and the religious leaders, indignant, demand he silence his disciples, seeing their praise as blasphemy.
And Jesus' response?
His response was profound and highly symbolic, especially in light of Lazarus. He says, I tell you, if they keep quiet, the stones will cry out.
The stones will cry out.
Okay.
What's the connection there? Well, this is where the layers of meaning get so rich. If you connect this back to the very recent, very public resurrection of Lazarus, who literally just came out of a tomb sealed by a stone, and you consider the common Jewish burial custom of placing stones on graves, partly as markers, partly to keep animals away, but symbolically marking the place of the dead.
Right.
Jesus' statement takes on this incredibly deep resonance. He seems to be saying, even if these living people are silenced, the very graves themselves, the stones that mark death's supposed finality, the stones from which I just demonstrated absolute power by raising Lazarus, they would bear witness to me.
Wow. So the stones representing death would testify to the Lord of life.
Precisely. It's an incredibly poetic, powerful affirmation of his divine identity and his absolute authority over life and death. The stones, the most inanimate, silent parts of creation, would attest to the living one's authority if human voices failed. It's a profound theological insight, suggesting that creation itself, even in its most inert forms, bears witness to its creator and redeemer.
Wow. We have covered an incredible amount of ground here. We've explored Jesus' power over everything from, well, the molecules in water turning to wine, to commanding raging storms, healing every kind of disease, and ultimately conquering death itself.
Creation, disease, food, nature, blindness, death. His authority touched everything.
It really did. But now, for you listening to this, how do these ancient, frankly mind-blowing stories, these demonstrations of unparalleled power, how do they actually impact your life and your faith today? What's the takeaway we can actually put into practice in our often chaotic, sometimes confusing, modern lives?
That's the crucial question, isn't it? How does this deep knowledge translate into daily living? And if we connect back to that bigger picture, the consistent unifying theme woven through all these miraculous accounts is God's absolute sovereignty.
His ultimate control and authority.
Yes. And the ultimate purpose behind everything he does, which is his own glory. We saw this principle illuminating the miracles themselves. We saw it underscoring the meaning found even in suffering. And it forms the absolute foundation for the call to believe in Christ.
So everything points back to God's will and God's power.
Our source material continually brings us back there. So the relevance isn't just historical curiosity, wow, look what happened back then. It's deeply personal, profoundly practical, and has eternal significance for us right now.
Okay, so how do we make that practical? What are some key principles we can actually use?
All right, let's try and distill some key principles from our sources for how we can genuinely put these truths into practice today, turning intellectual understanding into lived reality.
Great.
First, and maybe most fundamental, trust in God's sovereignty. We have to acknowledge deeply and consistently that God acts according to his perfect will and always ultimately for his own glory. This means he isn't primarily focused on fulfilling our immediate desires or ensuring our constant comfort.
He's not a cosmic vending machine?
Exactly. He's not a genie waiting for our commands. He's the sovereign Lord of all creation. His actions are always perfect, always wise, even when they don't align with our expectations, or when we honestly can't figure out the purpose right away.
That requires real faith.
It does. As our sources state, with just profound simplicity, God is just going to be glorified in some way. Our fundamental response, our act of faith, is to trust that, regardless of our circumstances. This trust allows us to find rest in his control, even when the world around us feels completely out of control.
Okay, trust his sovereignty. What's next?
Second, and this is often really challenging for many of us, embrace God's purpose in suffering.
That's a tough one.
It is, but our sources are quite clear. We need to understand that God can, and frequently does, teach us more profound and enduring lessons through times of sickness and suffering than he might through continuous health and ease.
So suffering isn't pointless.
No. He uses these experiences not typically to punish, but often to refine us, to prepare us for future glory, and to deepen our absolute dependence on him. He doesn't delight in our pain, but he redeems it for a greater eternal purpose. It often draws us closer to him, shapes our character in ways ease never could, and actually displays his strength most powerfully right in the middle of our weakness.
Shifting perspective from senseless burden to a crucible for growth.
Exactly, a crucible for spiritual growth. Third principle, recognize God's unchanging power.
He's still the same God.
Absolutely. The Bible declares it plainly in Hebrews 13:8. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever. His ability to perform miracles, to intervene supernaturally in the world, has not diminished one bit.
Even if we don't see things like the feeding of the 5,000 every day.
Right. Even if his timing and his methods aren't always what we expect or demand. Those modern examples we discussed earlier, the Yakima woman, the Argentinian girl, others, they serve as powerful reminders that his power is still active, still breaking through in our world today, often in quieter, more personal ways, but just as real.
So we shouldn't limit him based on our own experience.
We must be careful not to limit God's ability based on our personal experiences or our modern scientific paradigms or just general skepticism. His power remains limitless, boundless, utterly sovereign. Recognizing this should infuse our prayers with greater faith and our expectations with renewed hope.
Okay. Sovereignty, purpose in suffering, unchanging power. What else?
Fourth, cultivate genuine belief. This is critical. It's not enough just to intellectually acknowledge that these miracles happened historically. It's not even enough to believe in the concept of miracles generally.
What's the difference?
True. Saving belief is putting your complete faith and personal trust in Jesus himself as your Savior and Lord, not just in his ability to do cool stuff. Remember that verse in John 2 where it says Jesus did not commit himself to them because he knew all men?
Right, even though they saw the signs he did.
Exactly. They believed in the miracles, but they hadn't yet placed their full personal faith in him as their Messiah, the one they needed for salvation. Genuine belief is a personal commitment, a trusting surrender of our lives to the one who demonstrated this unparalleled authority over everything.
It's relational, not just intellectual agreement.
Precisely. And finally, fifth, give God the glory. When good things happen in our lives, especially unexpected or seemingly miraculous things, it is absolutely vital that we attribute the glory entirely to God. Not to our own efforts, not to some specific technique we used, not even to the person who prayed.
That requires humility.
Deep humility. Recalling the speaker's personal story about the healing in Yakima, he profoundly emphasized, it was God who healed her. I just think that sometimes we have the problem. We want the glory.
Oof, that hits home.
It does for all of us, I think. True faith recognizes God as the ultimate source of all good, all power, all intervention, and it directs all praise and thanksgiving back to Him alone. This protects us from spiritual pride and ensures God receives the honor that is rightfully His.
Trust sovereignty, embrace purpose in suffering, recognize unchanging power, cultivate genuine belief, and give God the glory. That's a powerful framework. So, what does this all mean for you listening right now? After hearing about Jesus' unparalleled power, from creating wine to commanding storms, healing disease, conquering death, and understanding that his power is still just as active today, how can you respond personally? This isn't just ancient history. It feels like a direct, profound invitation, doesn't it?
It absolutely is. And that raises the important question for every single one of us to ponder. The ultimate purpose of these miracles, as John told us, as our sources clearly indicate, was to lead people to believe in Jesus as the Messiah, the Son of God, and through that belief, to receive eternal life in His name.
So the invitation remains the same today.
It does. The invitation is to place your complete, unwavering confidence in the one who has proven his absolute power over all things: creation, disease, nature, physical resources, blindness, even death itself. It's about trusting the one who will always do what is right and perfect, even when we don't immediately understand his timing or his methods, even when his ways seem completely beyond our human logic. It's an invitation to a dynamic, living relationship rooted in the undeniable truth of his omnipotence, his perfect character, and his enduring love for us.
Consider that incredible scope again. If Jesus truly has power over the very elements of the universe, over life and death itself, then there's truly nothing too big for him to handle in your life. And yet, his compassion shows that there's nothing too small for his attention either. So maybe the question for you today is, what is one area of your life, perhaps a persistent challenge, a deep-seated fear, a relationship struggle, a seemingly insurmountable obstacle where you can consciously choose right now to place your confidence entirely in his miraculous sovereign power? Maybe take that step of faith today. Hashtag outro. We've journeyed through the breathtaking landscape of Christ's miraculous power today. We've explored his astonishing authority over creation, disease, food supplies, nature, blindness, and the ultimate enemy, death itself. We've seen again and again that the core purpose behind these acts wasn't just spectacle, but proving his divine identity as the Messiah, leading us to genuine belief in eternal life through faith in his name. His power isn't some relic of the past locked away in ancient texts. It's an active, living force today, always working according to his sovereign will and always for his ultimate glory.
And here's if you got a final thought to sit with. If Jesus truly holds together the molecular structure of the entire universe, moment by moment, as Colossians 1:17 suggests, and if he has the authority to simply command the very elements to loose or dissolve at the end of time, then perhaps the most astounding ongoing miracle isn't just the specific dramatic interventions we read about. Perhaps the most profound miracle is that he sustains everything patiently, meticulously, second by second, giving us the very space, the time, the air we breathe to seek him and to find him. What does that continuous, often unseen, utterly miraculous, sustaining power mean for how you choose to live your next moment, your next hour, your entire life? How does it maybe reframe your understanding of the world around you and the God who not only created it, but holds it all together right now?
That's a truly powerful thought to sit with, a profound perspective on our very existence. We really encourage you to reflect deeply on these miracles, on the power and the purpose behind them, and their implications for your own life and faith. Until next time, keep seeking, keep asking those questions, and keep diving deep into what truly matters.